Good morning, everyone. Can you guys hear me online?
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm just going to close this door. All right. Thank you. Morning. Sorry, guys. It's a little late setup. Give me a minute. Thank you. All right, guys. So as I mentioned on our last class on Wednesday, that was going to be our last formal class. So we did it. We went through the whole agenda. We've touched on everything from the basic manual side of things, the general concepts of what test cases are, what bugs are, what the SDLC process is, right? The software development lifecycle. Then we started rolling into some of the more technical stuff that you'd be using, such as how to query databases, how to understand web architecture, APIs. We touched on automation this past week. So we've gone through it all at this point. So hopefully you guys have the understanding that you need to really excel in this field. So we have these 2 weeks available to us right now. And like I said, this is just going to be a lot more free form. Anything that you guys want to discuss, we can discuss. We can joke around. We can do whatever. So much more free form. We're right now, for today anyways, the agenda for today is we're going to take about the next hour and just talk about whatever. I'm going to do a little recap of SDLC, and I know there were some questions being brought up about the release cycle, or rather the release process, and how do you know if something's good, and all of that. So we'll talk on that a little bit for the next hour, and then we have a guest speaker at 11:15, and they're going to be going through the whole tips and tricks and all that when it comes to applying for jobs and interviews and all that kind of good, helpful information. But then other than that, that's pretty much our agenda for today. Is there anything anybody would like to ask or bring up? All right. So with that, then, all right, I'm just going to kind of ramble on right now, and good morning. No. All right, got another one. Morning. So I was just saying to these guys, and as I mentioned the other day, right, today's going to be much more free form. So this is your opportunity to bring up whatever you want to bring up. One thing I'm just going to say right now is, as far as anything automation related, I know a lot of some of you guys anyways are still catching up. And so you have time to catch up. So please go ahead and do that. I want to hold off on a lot of the automation specific stuff until say next week, just so we give an opportunity to those other students to catch up, and also give you more time to play around with it yourself and see if you can figure out whatever issues that you're having. So let's just try to hold off anything automation wise. So SDLC, who wants to walk me through that a little bit? All right, let's say you're interviewing, or you're just having a conversation with someone in the field, and they want to see how knowledgeable you are about SDLC. Well, what would you say? How would you describe SDLC? What's the purpose of it? How is it used? Anybody online? Lots of volunteers today. Oof, today's definitely what is it, a light attendance day. All right, what about you, Boris?
Oh,
I'm sorry, calling people out right now.
software development lifecycle.
Yes, sir.
That's what it means.
That is what it means.
And it's software development lifecycle.
And then we don't have the mic set up, so if you guys just like talk a little louder so everyone can hear.
Yeah. That's it. It's a process of how we get software from at the very beginning to the very end, testing for all of the potential bugs and all the features before we can do a full release.
All right, anything else to that?
I'll leave it there.
Actually, let's do this way, because yes, I had couple mentoring sessions, and people were asking, can you explain what you did at your job, right? Let's maybe share just.
Yeah, Evgeny, I have similar questions. We talked with our team, and similar question. What we doing in company? How they from start from morning to evening? More about company for.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think and let's do a recap. Like, what do you do here in class and how it's related to your work, right? So let me explain for the last I'll give an example for the last 3 companies or 2 companies. In my last company, we had the sprints, 3-week sprints. So here you have 1-week sprints. In other companies, it was usually 2-week sprints. So it was a little bit different. The same concept. In the beginning of before the sprint start, like I would say in the end of the current sprint, we would sit together and do sprint planning with a grooming session, right? So that would be a week before the sprint is supposed to start. And on this sprint, we would do the same thing what you do here. You would go over the tickets, and we would answer the questions if we would not clear the details of the tickets. So let's say they want to implement something, design not design. They would have user stories written, right? So we would go over that, and then right before the ending of the sprint, before the beginning of the sprint, we would have retrospective session. The same thing you have. What went well, what we could improve or did better, and the action items, right? The same thing. That meeting usually like 15-30 minutes long. Yes.
So the grooming session is when you assign story points?
No. You don't assign story points until you start the sprint. It's pretty much the same thing what you did here. We don't assign you story point. We don't assign you the stories until you start the sprints. But you mean estimating?
The estimation, yeah, that's what he's talking about.
Okay, you were talking about estimation. Yes, in grooming session we do estimation.
Okay. So like how we
Yes.
do the scrum poker, that's the grooming session.
Yeah. In my actual company, we used the actual cards with the size of Fibonacci stars. So we would throw the cards on the table, and people who was remote, they would just hit in the Slack, similar to Slack. In the Slack channel, they would hit the number that they chose, right? So, and that's pretty much it. That would be a grooming session.
It's usually in the start of the day, tomorrow.
Not necessarily.
It could be whenever.
Yeah.
It's just schedules, right? Like whatever time works for everybody.
Yeah.
It could be in the morning, it could be in the afternoon, it could be in the evening. It just needs to be before the sprint has started.
Yeah. It's like before the actual works start, you have to figure out what you have to do, right? Then at the end of the sprint, like at the same day of the last day of the sprint, we would have retrospective, and we would have the next meeting. We would also sprint planning, but that would be a kickoff. The same thing what you do here on Sunday. You would hit start button, and I mean, we would review all tickets that we have on the sprint, and then if we all agree and no any other objections, and actually, I mean, it's kind of late to bring up any other objections unless if it's very something urgent, right? You can obviously escalate it, and that's pretty much it. So sprint started. Then our developers, they would jump on the ticket, they would start working on the ticket. QAs would also jump on the ticket, on the same tickets that developers do, but we would review it. We would think, okay, what we have to prepare for executing test cases, right? The main difference in my company, we all QAs were automation guys. So we would start preparing like our test cases written in automation wise. Yeah, and once ticket is ready for QA from developer side, we would pick up any available QA ticket. I mean, user story, and we would assign it to myself. I would assign it to myself, and we would start working on it. Once I finished with QA, I move the ticket to ready for UAT, and then if it is a user story, I would approach to product manager and ask him, dude, this ticket is ready. You wanna do UAT real quick? UAT, yeah, let's do this. Since we are in the same room, he would just come over to my laptop. I show him the user story that I was working on, and just show him what was basically done by developers, and is it supposed to work as he was expecting. And he would say, okay, that looks fine. Or he can say, could you please do some use cases? Let's say if that would be login, can you log in, log out? Can you re-log in or whatever, right? And that's it. And this user story goes to done column, and that means it's ready for release. When it's, I mean, each company has different policies with the release ticket, but in our company, we have 2 days every week. It was Tuesdays and Thursdays when we're supposed to do any releases across the whole company. And we had 6 or 5 teams besides my team, right? So everybody on the same company on all different teams, they would release their stuff on that particular day. Our release process was kind of screwed up compared to other companies. It was sequential. Right? So if you would be the first team, second team, third team, so you would release first, and the second team supposed to wait.
It's weird.
It was really weird, but it is what it is. So, and all 5 teams, their process would like from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. That's pretty much it. Sometimes it was past midnight. It happened, like when you have to roll back or you see some issues in the release process. So once your ticket is ready for release, usually if it's good, it goes to the next release. Maybe not if it's, let's say I finished it on Monday, so that would be released not on Tuesday but on Thursday. And this particular that company.
You
Yes.
said you worked at Verify, yeah?
Yes.
And that company had a lot of releases over and over again?
Every Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Every Tuesday and Thursday. So
Every Tuesday.
why do they need so many? Like, is it like new versions that kept getting released?
I mean, right now companies, they trying to go to every day's release.
Wow.
So Tuesday and Thursday is not very often actually. Nowadays, companies trying to release constantly, like little portions every. Like Azad's company, they release every day.
But what is the point?
Twice to release to deliver
Continuous
features.
delivery.
Faster shipping, like you buy from Amazon, you don't want to wait for 2 weeks, right? You want to wait, you want to get it like today in 30 minutes with all these drones now, right?
Yeah.
But
That's exactly the same
but a
thing.
company like Verify, you do background checks.
We don't do
Right,
background
no.
checks. No, it's you misunderstood.
Okay.
Yeah.
But like, does that company like need a release every other day?
Yeah.
Or
I mean,
Imagine you have a very major issue and you're losing money and you want to wait and like lose money for the next 2 weeks till the next release. No, you don't.
this is the trend right now. Continuous delivery. So it's agile process. It's an agile world, right? What was in the waterfall? For example, my first company, they had waterfall process. So they would build mobile application, and actually, in mobile, it's still more waterfall rather than agile. So they would build. They would be working on the build for a month, and they would release once a month. And it's, to be honest, it's a very stressful thing because they were preparing the whole month, and I experienced it several times when something was screwed up. They released it, they shipped it. Apple process, I mean, on Apple side, Apple Store, their process pretty intense also. Like it's, and on Google Store, it's also like not that easy to pass through there.
Not as bad as Apple though.
Yeah, right. So, and then user for some reason found out something weird bugs, or actually it was one build was so bad that they didn't really test it. We said we should test this build. Okay, no, that's a small fix. Let's release it. And they released. People were fried. People were fried because of that poor decision. Because their rating in the Apple Store dropped from 3.5 stars up to 2 stars. That happened.
I love reading the reviews. If you guys hate an app, leave a review, because I promise you, even though you might not get feedback or an answer directly from the developer, those reviews are being reviewed. Someone's reading them at the company, and decisions are being made off of those.
Apple guys, they actually hiring those people who's actually do reviews for the apps. So bottom line, we did twice a week the delivery, which is called release, right? In other company,
So yeah, I only have one thing here to say. Maybe guys, it's not the best example really right now, because in those companies that we used to work, because of the very strong automation in place, that's why they can really do that. And for you, so when you go to the market, it's really, you cannot really release every day because you cannot do regression. For you, it means you need to execute regression test cases every day, and it's not feasible. So for you, of course, it's your next level to get into automation, but for now, I would say like daily release or like every other week release would work the best.
yeah, for example, let's give an example. iCrossing, Toyota. That was also, the process was mixed with waterfall and agile. They didn't do release every week. They did release every other week, right? So we would prepare our test cases for manual testing for about a week, and within next week we would do regression test on all stages: QA stage, staging environment, and then quick smoke check on the production, right? Their process of release was also pretty smooth, I would say. It was also after hours, right? Remember that? 6 p.m.?
Yeah, so you usually want to do release when you have the less amount of customers on your website, and it's based on your really like customer base.
Yeah.
So for corporations, it's usually like weekends, right? So we have like full 2 days, just something, if in case something goes very bad, you have 2 days to recover. For websites like regular client-facing people, it's usually the opposite. It's usually work days, work nights actually,
Or nights.
where you have the less amount of traffic. So if something gets affected, it's not that bad, right? It's only like few, depending on your application, can be thousands really, but luckily not millions, right?
Right. Actually, about also about manual testing and daily release. In Azad's company, they actually did manual testing and they had daily release.
Seriously?
Yes. So
How they do it?
that's why I quit. But
You didn't last long in the company.
I was like, fuck this guy.
Month or something?
Wow. I like his. Yeah, it is a painful process. Like you had to, but it doesn't mean that you're supposed to stay every day. But that means that you have to be prepared to stay every day. So like that's very common. And
Evgeny,
yes,
if I say I respond for regression test for each release, it means I can do it manually every time before release. Can I say for manual?
yes, you have to do regression, but not for. I mean, you are working on user story, right? So you do regression for user story, not for release. But this,
Okay.
yes, this user story, I mean, this ticket is supposed to be released. So that's kind of the sequence. You're working on the user story, which is ready for QA. Then you do you do regression test on that user story after you did functional test of the particular feature, right? Then you do regression test on the whole application after that, and then you do, and then you said that's ready for release, and you don't need to do another regression test for release.
No, okay. You mean I can't say I responsive regression test for release because I do manual only.
It doesn't really matter. So you're responsible for do regression test. Anytime when you are working on this user story or bug fix. Bug fix is pretty much the same thing. You found an issue in production or you found an issue in whatever in production actually, and then they're supposed to fix it, and then you have to verify that this bug was fixed, and then you have to do another regression test for
Okay, thanks.
for the whole thing. It's like it's painful process. It's not that quick. But for regression, again, and if you're working and you are limited in QA resources, meaning that you don't have a lot of QA guys who would jump on it and test everything. You just don't have time for that. So that's why regression actually is not really regression. That would be like multiple smoke checks for different functionality of the feature, but it's rarely you can afford to do the whole regression of the whole application by yourself. This is very waterfall thing. It would be go to like, okay, in my first company actually where I used to work, they did a gaming app, right? So they actually have the entire flow of QA testers with the 50 or 60 people over there, just only testers. And for them, it would be, yes, they had a regression, and for regression, they have 3 days, right? And like all, let's say, and within 50, 60 people, they divided in the other teams, in different teams, and each team, they would be doing their regression part, right? And they can do it, but it's waterfall. They release it every month. Make sense? I hope it is.
Yes, thanks.
Yeah, that was verified. Toyota was also that, as I said, every other week we did release. We had we had two QAs in US in Santa Monica, and we had offshore team which were actually executing regression tests in India. Yeah, different companies. Another company in Burbank where I used to work, my previous company before actually Verify. They also had several teams. In each team we had like the ratio actually between developers and QAs was horrible. 10 developers approximately and one, if you're lucky, two QAs. Yeah, it was tough. And automation, and everyone, actually, that's a good, just remind, please remember this thing. Everyone, every company, they said, we do automation, right? But none of them, except the last company, except last and one more company, they didn't do automation. They just pretending that they have automation. Everything was manual. So 10 testing crew, 10 people, one QA, one product manager, and one tech lead. Tech lead is like a senior software developer, or like the lead senior developer. He would taking care of the ticket, he know all technical part, and he would work with you closely, and he would work with product. And you would work closely to developers, tech lead, and a product as well. Yeah, that's how it was in my companies.
Yeah, one thing you'll see a lot is a lot of these companies, everybody wants automation, and even if they start moving forward with the initiative to start trying to get that in place, most of the times they're not really prepared to take on that workload and allocate the amount of resources and time required for automation. Like for me, in the position I'm currently, if I ever go to a new company as a senior QA automation engineer or an SDET, I ask a lot of questions, and I go hard. I'll start grilling them almost.
Yep.
Just because like I want to make sure that you're not just trying to sell me on the idea of automation, but you guys are like, no shit, trying to implement this. The CEO is about this. The CTO is about this. Like, I want to meet them and I want to confirm, because otherwise I'm going to go into a company and I'm going to be manually testing. No, that's not happening.
Yeah. Here's a sample of questions that you can ask actually during the interview, and you would, as I said, like during my mentoring sessions, I highly recommend, like, and this is my approach, but I like this approach, to turn the interview to a conversation, to a dialogue between you and them. It's like you would have positions on this equal, right, to them. Because you also want to find out their culture, what they are doing, and would you like to work there, right? Because you're a professional, you're solving the problem. So I usually ask a lot of questions, like Robert said. Like I also like, oh guys, what do you do? If they start grilling me about automation, I would ask them back again. Okay, guys, what you guys are using for automation? And they would say, we would use some bullshit framework, right?
The same thing you would ask if they ask you about automation. If they're giving you the same bad answers, now you're agreeing.
Yeah, exactly, right?
And trust me, they do that. They try to convince you without like having anything, just laughing over there.
So one example, my two previous companies. One of them, it was senior QA automation. Please mute yourself, guys. So senior QA automation position. The interview process was okay. It wasn't that super difficult, but they sent me some technical assignments. But before that, I actually start asking them, guys, what's the length of the project? because they was working, actually they were a digital agency as well, like we are. They are working for other guys and say, okay, how many clients you have? Like, and they answered me, we have multiple clients. All right, like what's the length of the project? And they would say, about 3 months. Interesting. What do you do in these 3 months? Is it like, do you work from scratch? Do you work MVPs? They did only MVPs. So I said, you trying to find a guy for QA automation for MVP project. And in automation, you're supposed to start automating stable build, not a build which is constantly in development. Not in the development, constantly changing, right? And their build is not working actually. In 3 months, I just was asking, guys, are you really sure that you are doing the automation or you just want to do automation? And the guy, he said, yeah, we actually don't have automation. We want to do that. I said, it's just impossible to do with this length of time. It will take me 3 months to build the framework, but you have to be ready, everything, right, by 3 months. It's just not, the return of investment is not there. And they actually admitted when I was talking to their senior QA automation guy, he said, well, I just do API testing through Postman, and that's pretty much it. That's the maximum that they had. They want to do automation, but it's just impossible. And you have to keep in mind that whatever you see in the job description, like 70%, if it's not stated clearly, even if it is, QA automation position or as that role, right? It's like more likely that it is actually automation position, but not necessarily. But if it doesn't state that, like they would say QA engineer, QA analyst, QA whatever, it's like 99% it's a manual position. Maybe with some API database testing,
some automation tools,
some automation,
but not
yeah.
the development of a framework.
Not the development.
Because I look a lot of QA engineer in description, automate, blah blah blah. It's
Of course.
almost everywhere.
Of course. Yeah.
And there's so many tools though that are out of the box that you can start automating something and do some basic automation, right? Like the stuff we did with Postman. You guys did some automation there, right? And you guys understand how to do that. That completely is valid for those types of roles that you're looking at. The Cucumber framework that you guys started messing around with, right? Like you started automating things, and that's completely valid experience. But neither one of those two tools are something that you can develop a whole automation framework around solely those tools, right? You can use them for one-off scenarios to simplify certain things, but that's not going to give you your one-and-all solution for your automation needs.
Right. Another company where I was working, they actually, that was so funny. So they had multiple times attempts to implementing automation, and they hired an automation guy, but their framework wasn't in use at all. It was just multiple times people were coming in the company and they were trying to bring the solution, but their solution didn't work, so nobody was using, and they fired them, they hired another guy, and then it was like constant loop.
SDLC.
SDLC, yes. So, yeah, but all other positions where if you would see their job requirements and job description, it's state there, oh, we want to have you Java, JavaScript, Python, C#, automation,
Masters
8 years in
computer
automation,
science.
yeah, master in computer science, and all this stuff. But obviously, it's just nice to have.
Not a single job that I've gotten, right, according to the actual description that was put out there for the requirements, I technically did not meet any of those requirements in its entirety for any of my prior positions.
Yeah, same here.
And I was always able to thrive and do well and contribute and add value. As long as you have a couple of those, you meet a couple of those requirements, you're golden. Like, don't get too wrapped up on it. Again, none of us have a background in computer science formally. None of us have our degree. and it's not something that's going to stop you.
But I think what is the most important in job interview and job searching, I mean, especially for us guys, like who are from former Soviet Union countries, we need to smile, you know. That's a very common mistake. You need to be positive. So you go to interview, you just, you know, be friendly, be open-minded. You know, it's not like a torturing process. I mean, it feels like it's a torturing process, but you need to be positive, right? When you come, and actually, this is, I would say, it's like a 50% for specifically for the manual positions. It's like a 50% of success, as long as they will like you as a person, right? You asking the right questions. You eager to learn, and you show them your good behavior, attitude. You know, like you have a super professional. I mean, you know, this vibe, and that's like 50% of success. I mean, if you will go there and you will be not smiling and you will be just, you know, super serious, just relax. Just relax. Don't take it too serious.
I have a question. Assuming that you do get a job and you don't have any QA experience,
Can you come closer so people
I
can?
thought you could hear me because I'm speaking very loud. Assuming that you get a job and you don't have any QA experience, how will your first week go without, you know, when you don't know like all of the processes? Even though we learned a lot of the basic ideas here on what we're going to need to do and how we're going to need to do it, the first week might seem a little bit confusing as you've never like done this before.
I got it. Yeah, I got it. I had this. Yeah. I had this experience as well. So don't worry. If it is a, I would say, how to say the proper words without cursing. All right. If it's a decent company enough, they would give you at least 2 weeks. At least 2 weeks for onboarding process. You would do, for example, at Verify, they told me that they are not expecting me for about 3 months to like deliver because their architecture was pretty tough and tough to learn. So they would give me 3 months to just onboard it, to learn their processes and all this stuff. Other companies, they gave me like 2 weeks, month, 2 weeks, month.
And you do it self or you have mentor?
Some companies, they have this buddies thing, right? You would have a buddy or you would have a mentor or you would have, but most of the time you would have some senior guy who you can ask questions. And as I said, the process of asking questions is exactly the same as what we are teaching here. You have question, if it's very general, just freaking Google it, you know?
Yeah, and then of course, same thing, you're gonna be working in a team, right? And there's gonna be other QAs in your team that you can rely on, and you have questions, go to them, right? So it's not like, not in every situation you're gonna have a personal mentor assigned to you, but you always have resources readily available to you at your disposal that you can talk to and get those questions answered.
Yeah.
So if you can't Google it, ask someone in your team, and if they don't know it, they should help you speak to someone who can figure it out.
Or you can ask, you know, when I was in my first job, I was like, oh shit, should I ask this question or should I, right? And Google is not really helping. And then if it's 40 minutes of Googling, it's not helping at all, then okay, I think I can ask this question.
Limit yourself to like 15, 20 minutes maybe.
Yeah. Like, and then I would actually ask my peer. He would say, I would ask him, dude, do you know who can help me with this question? Because I'm not assuming that he knows the answer, but do you know whom should I ask? And usually he said, oh, this related to their team, so go to their team. And their team would be, I would come to them and I feel myself like as a ping pong, Like,
Nah.
do you guys know whom should I ask about this question related to that product? Oh, that should be another team.
Yeah.
All right, and then you go, but which is good. You actually go and know those people. You get familiar with these companies, and actually, then it's gonna be easier to communicate. And you should have no, fear. Just go and ask questions.
Yeah, Evgeny brings up a great point too. Like, listen, there's so many teams in these companies, and the larger the company, the more teams there are going to be. Everybody provides a certain piece of the puzzle, right? Everyone works on a different area of the application, whether it's something directly related to features and functionality, or it's related just to support of environments and databases and servers, right? Everyone's involved in one way or another. And early on, you're going to have questions that can't be entirely answered within your immediate team. And yeah, you do need to venture out, and you do need to start speaking to product managers maybe on other teams. And it's going to be a little bit weird at first. Like, it totally will be. You're feeling comfortable, especially being new like you guys are, and you're not sure if it's a stupid question or not, right? Well, truly, the only stupid question is going to be the question you don't ask. And there's going to be cases where you might have a product manager who isn't super personable, and you ask that question, and like they give you like, that side eye, like, really, you're asking me that? Don't let that deter you, all right? Because you're going to wind up not asking that question that you need an answer to. You're going to keep going about your day. You're going to waste more time, and you're going to be in the same position you started in, which is not knowing the answer to that question. Right. So you ask those questions, you become familiar with people, you start understanding who does what, who can help you, and that will help you succeed. I am great when it comes to office politics. And so like the first 2 weeks I'm in there, I'm floating around everywhere. Like, I'm getting to know everybody, everyone's getting to know me, like, I'm making myself known. And it just simplifies things, especially if you see yourself that, like, if you all should have been Scrum Masters at least a few times throughout this course. And some of you guys have realized that that's something you like to do. You like to be in that managerial type role, kind of dictate the conversation and make sure everything's getting addressed. And others want to just be kind of in the background and do their own thing. That's fine, right? And if you find yourself in that position where you like being that Scrum Master, you like running point on these meetings, well, when you start doing those types of doing that type of networking early on in the company, you're going to set yourself up for success. You're going to be able to get lead positions. You're going to be able to go to other teams, right? Then you're going to become more cross-functional. Not only did you start off in this one team and learn, say, the in and outs of the mobile application, now you've migrated to the web application, or you've migrated to some other internal application that they have, right? It gets you more well-rounded. It gives you more opportunities. That's what you want. Don't limit yourself.
Especially, actually, when you're new, you have this leverage to ask questions, stupid questions.
Yeah.
Don't wait until, after 6 months, people have some expectation about you, about knowledge of the product, and if you don't know the answer, right, or you don't know the clear understanding of this product, that's bad. Actually.
Yeah, then you're gonna look bad. You have that window early on.
Ask as much questions as you can on the first weeks. Like, your job is to get to know the product, the process, the company, and ask questions. That's what because I saw a couple of students, they were asking very basic questions in the end of the course. Where have you been the whole course? The same thing you can experience in the company. Please ask questions. Right?
Yeah, same thing here. I think about, we're in a learning environment. There's no stupid questions here, right? But we are following the course, right? There is a specific guideline. Week by week, we're doing different things. If you're asking me questions about defects and bugs, which was on week 2, all right, and we're in week 7 and 8, there's a problem, all right? That should have been flushed out earlier on. Same concept when you're out in the real world.
Yeah.
But we also come with 3+ years experience to these jobs.
It doesn't matter. It really doesn't. Every place operates a little bit differently. People still have different experiences from prior companies. Like, no one here is coming in as a senior. Everyone's coming in entry level, right? So those entry level questions are still completely valid.
So our two students, they were, I mean, I mentioned that multiple times, but I just let you know one more time again. Two of our students, they were hired in the company in El Segundo here in Los Angeles. And managers, they were pretty impressed by what they are knowing, by their knowledge, because they actually start educate their guys who actually have experience. So don't underestimate that you don't have an experience, but you have knowledge. You will get surprised that you might know much more versus to people who is working with real in the work. Because, all right, in the company where I start working, people had their like not 3 years of real experience, right? But their knowledge was short of limited. Why was that? Because they were just doing manual testing with the video games, and they were doing checklists and nothing above and beyond, right? Just that. So don't underestimate. You have we went through the process, which is very similar to the what you're supposed to have. So
guys, yeah, one thing, they try to measure your knowledge based on your years, which is really, it doesn't work that way. They try to come up with like universal solution, and it doesn't work. At the same time, they want to hire someone who will solve their problems. So you are problem solvers, and I have no doubt in that, because you have enough knowledge, sometimes more than their full-time QAs actually. So you're able to solve their problems. That's all that you need to know, period.
Can I also add,
go ahead.
one more thing here? In the company where I will be working, they actually told me already the process of onboarding. So the company is B2B, so business to business, and they have special dedicated team that teaches clients how to use their software. And they told me that I'll be working with them for like first 2 weeks just to know the product. So like before actually starting like doing testing, the main thing is actually to know the product. And they said to me that, you know, when onboarding process will go, I will actually be working with, you know, with those people and will be, you know, getting accustomed. And except that in the company, there are 2 product owners, and the way how it works in the company, during the week, there are 2 days in a week where they have a window where anyone can come to them and ask any questions. Like there is special time dedicated to that. Anyone in the company can go and ask them any questions. So and I found it really, really interesting, because then, you know, it kind of eliminates a lot of things when you can just go and ask questions to the product owner, that they have special dedicated time just for Q&A.
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's like an open door policy. That's great. You know, when you see that, that speaks a lot about the company, and they have transparency. You have some companies that are going to be all about like hierarchy, and no, you can't speak to this person until you go through this person, and then first you got to go through me, right? So that sounds pretty good. And then those first 2 weeks of onboarding, you gotta learn the application, and not just learn the application, but you need to get access to everything, right? You need to get access to the SQL database. You need to get your machines set up and get your local environment set up. You need access to Jira. You need access to whatever other internal services that they're using. All that takes time. Tickets need to be submitted. Things need to get processed. So yeah, there's just a lot of learning in those first couple of weeks.
Any questions?
Or comments, throw in whatever you guys want, you know, it's just free form.
So the bottom line, what I'm trying to say, just try to explain how the sprint looks like, what is the process of testing, like when is a QA, when is a staging environment. That's very basic, but this is the most important. Like how you find an issue, or how you find a bug, what do you do, how do you log the bugs, right? What do you include in the bug reports? I mean, what kind of information? How do you do debugging? Debugging is like, okay, you found an issue. What is your next step, right? It's not like, oh, I found an issue and go to Jira and log it right away. I have to do some investigation of this issue, where it comes from. Is it on the back-end side, front-end side? Is it like is there any, I mean, this issue, I mean, that's a whole other topic, but knowing how to do debugging is very important as well, and which will stand you out from the crowd. Basically do investigation, right? If this issue happens only on this device, or if this issue happens on specifically this functionality or any other different areas, you know, so you have to go a little bit further.
That and like so, and then also, right? What value do you add? What value are you guys bringing to the table? One thing that I know has helped me in the past is there were different tools I was able to talk about during the interview that I was like, oh, you know, are you guys familiar with this or that? You know, maybe this is something we can use to speed up our QA process or help our documentation process. There was one tool. I forgot the name of it right now. I know I have it jotted down somewhere, but basically the cool thing about that was, and this was a tool that you didn't have to be a developer, right? But you do need to understand just a little bit of code, and basically it allowed us to test in multiple browsers in parallel, manual testing, right? Manual testing, and I can have Internet Explorer, I can have a Google Chrome, and I can have Firefox all open using one page, say my Google page.
Like a browser stack?
Not a browser stack, because all this is happening local. And so the application, basically there's a snippet of code that needs to be introduced to the application. So you just give this to the developer, be like, hey, can you put this somewhere in a common place within the application, right? So like I said, a little bit of coding, but that's going to be on the developer's part. They put this little code snippet in there, and now in the development environment or test environment, when you open the application, you can now have 3 different browsers open, and all the browsers are going to mimic the behavior that I'm doing. So I click a button on one page, all 3 browsers are going to get that same click, and that's 3 different instances of browser testing that you're doing at once. You're saving so much time, and you're also eliminating the tediousness of going through the same test for each browser, because you can see everything that's going on, right? So, I mean, I was able to talk about that and how we can use that, and I know it caught their attention, and I know that's like what helped me get that job back then. And I mean, whether it's even like Postman, right? Like how you can go ahead and automate some of those calls and utilize the assertions, or if you figure out how to mess around with JMeter or some of these other tools that just add value, right? So not only show that you know what you're talking about, but also show that you can add value because you're familiar with these tools that you guys might be able to leverage and speed up the process, increase the quality of testing.
By the way, we just signed up the agreement with one company. They will give us an access to their dev environment for mobile application, native. I hope it will happen on next week. So if it will happen on next week, we will have a chance to practice on that. However, if they will give us an access on the following week or on other week, you are free and welcome to join if you want to do some practicing with the mobile application as well. I know that we did have that hands-on experience, but hopefully we will have it next week. So I will let you know, guys, as soon as it will be ready.
Yeah, no, a lot of you guys are asking about Charles Proxy, so
yeah,
you know, you guys will have that opportunity, hopefully. Well, either way, you guys still have the applications that you were able to push to your devices. But yeah, more Charles Proxy.
Any questions?
Maybe I have a question more about automation. We have a lot of position with automation skills, and when we will have a phone screen, interview, and maybe they will ask us, what about automation skill, guys, and what they expect, and what if what they have reaction, what kind of reaction they will have if I say, okay, guys, I just have some automation skills, but I'm using only Cucumber, and I'm not familiar with Java, Python, or if I say I just self-driving person and I'm manual tester, but I want to develop in automation, and I figure out how to automate my smoke suite with Cucumber. It's enough for this question. What do you think?
It depends on the position that you are going to interview or what recruiters want to offer you, right? So if you go blind, and obviously, I mean, the problem with the recruiters that they don't know about much about the position and they're just looking purely and on the job description. And if this job description says it's a manual position, I mean, you can read between the lines that it is a manual position, but they will be asking, oh, well, what about automation? So yeah, you can say that you have pretty solid understanding of QA automation concept, and we've been doing writing simple test scripts with Cucumber. But it very depends on the position. If it is QA automation position, I would probably skip it. But again, it's not necessarily, right? But if it's QA engineering position, you can clarify what they are looking for. If it is a recruiter, right?
Yeah, but to really, the response that you're going to give them, which you kind of mentioned what you would say, it's all about how you deliver it, right? And if you're not able to articulate the concepts you're talking about, they're going to ask more follow-up questions.
Yep.
And you may be in a position that now you're kind of uncomfortable because now you're going down this path of automation where, you know, you're not an expert in, and that's not what you're trying to get hired for. So, you know, be honest. You know, everyone now at this point understands the basic concepts of automation and how it can be used, but nobody here can start developing any automation on their own, right? So you can say that, yes, I'm familiar with these concepts. We've utilized Cucumber, we've utilized Gherkin, and this is how we used it, right? And now that's your opportunity to talk about your experience firsthand. So I started developing a smoke suite around it, and we wanted to automate our registration process. And this allowed me to become familiar with how to locate elements using CSS selectors or relative XPaths. And I was able to automate a scenario or two, right? And that's how you can talk about it. So they understand that, you know, that you understand what automation is, that you've done a little bit of it, but you're not putting yourself out there that you're an expert and you can automate all this stuff for them, right? So don't say that, no, I don't know anything, because you do know something, right? But also don't tell them that you know everything and you're amazing at automation, right? You don't want to be in that position when you're not going to be able to deliver. So it's all about how you phrase it.
Yep. And you can mention that you are actually learning automation. That's not going to be a lie as well.
Mm-hmm. And that looks good too, because they're going to ask you that question. Well, where do you see yourself in 3 to 5 years from now? Well, hopefully I'm going to be doing automation. You know, I've already started on it a little bit. I'm going to continue on with my learning. I'm very motivated. I do this on my own time. I want to contribute this to the company as well, right? So
yeah, but be careful. Like, check what they're looking for.
Yeah. Check what they're looking for.
If they're looking for manual, don't even say that.
I mean,
well, no, I mean, there's still value to that because at some point
you can say, well, I want to expand my skills.
Yeah, right? Expand your skills.
Yeah,
so Evgeny got hired in Toyota, and Azat didn't, just because Azat was overqualified and they were looking for a manual guy, not automation guy.
Yeah,
It's like lottery.
Because
it's not a lottery.
It's actually where your skills are.
You ask what they want, and you twist it a little bit so you fit better.
Well, yeah, because
position.
Azad was already doing automation at that
All
point.
right.
Right.
Do you guys all apply to the same positions?
Yeah,
Yeah, the 3 resumes at once.
we did. It was my second job actually. Right after.
I refer them both.
Yeah.
Kenny did it.
You worked at Toyota too?
Huh?
You worked at Toyota too?
Yeah, I already
Yeah.
worked in that company.
Gotta bring up your friends, especially if there's a referral fee. Referral fee.
Yeah,
Referral
they didn't.
fee, yeah.
They didn't give it to me because I didn't qualify for that, unfortunately. But anyway,
Sorry, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
I have a question actually two questions about regression testing. Just for example, if somebody asks me how much time do you need to perform a regression testing, what I have to answer, and just for example, it consists of 300 or 500 test cases about regarding estimation time. For example, how much time do you need to perform manual regression?
Open up Zephyr and do it manually once. That was funny, huh?
So how much time do I need?
Sergey, you cannot answer these questions in terms of numbers.
It's a trick question.
It's a trick question because whatever you say, it will be a wrong answer. Why? Because you don't know how many times, like how long it takes you to execute 300 test cases. Because you don't know how their test cases looks like. You don't know what needs to be done to execute them, right? Maybe it is what kind of test cases, right? If it's very basic smoke check, like click here, check here, maybe a day, maybe a week, you don't know.
And if it is a whole application?
But you don't know the application, right? If it's what if you say application like Amazon, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy.
So the proper answer to that, if someone asks you that in an interview, though, what you should tell them or your response should be, well, it's very dependent on the extensiveness of the regression suite. How much functionality exists within this application?
Yep.
How detailed are the regression test cases that I can reference? What are how many other resources are going to be helping me test this as well? Is it only going to be one QA executing regression? Is it going to be the whole QA team, right? So these are questions that you can start throwing back to them so you get a better idea. All right, so how long on average does one test case take? All right, well, and how many test cases do we have? Well, all right, let's multiply that by each other, and that's going to be an estimation of how long Smoke can take me. Oh, there's going to be a deadline. We have a release that needs to go out. Well, all right, now we need to do a sanity check instead, right? Because we can't execute the entire regression suite. So I need to understand what areas of the application have been impacted by these changes in order to allocate my time or focus to a specific area of the application, right? Those are questions that are set up so you can start tripping over yourself, all right? And then you're going to be sweating and saying stuff that you shouldn't say, and you have the knowledge. Right?
I understand. I need to ask them something that they couldn't answer to me.
So no.
Yes, something like this. And I have the second question. Just for example, if somebody ask me, we have a manual QA and we have a whole bunch of manual test cases, and how much time do you need to automate all of these test cases? You say, just for example, you said that you know Cucumber.
Stop coming up with these questions.
Yeah, but for example, they have test cases and they want to automate them.
Well, first of all, Sergey, you can ask why do you ask this question?
I mean, my position for
just because they have just only manual QAs, and they want to have somebody who can automate them.
Here's the thing: either you apply to a wrong position, or they confuse you with the automation guy. That's the whole point. So you shouldn't ask this question.
Okay, no problem.
Another thing, like about how many times, I mean, how long it takes you to execute X and Y, Z test cases. You have to clarify, right? As just Robert mentioned. All right, can you give me more details? Like,
I think it's not valid even question to ask.
right.
I wouldn't even spend time answering this question.
What would you do if they would ask you?
I mean, if they would ask you, then you would answer. But for now, I don't think it's a valid question on the interview to ask.
How to
About
want
what?
to execute regression?
Yeah, like it's a stupid question. How do you know?
But they asked me
That's
this.
a valid question.
That's a valid question.
I mean,
Yeah.
you have no idea.
Well, that's it, right?
No,
You want to see what
Depends
they're
on,
going to
like,
do.
But-
on a million factors, but
Wait.
I mean, it's a stupid
Here
question.
we don't. Yeah, there's a lot of stupid questions, but they ask them. So what we just trying to figure it out what's the best answer. Yeah. You know?
It's not going to be like that.
Yeah,
okay.
if you say
Okay.
if you will say that it's a stupid question, you can
done with
just
it.
stand and go.
Yeah,
Just like pencil or vending machine, it's stupid questions, but they can
Yeah,
ask
don't-
you.
Yeah, don't tell them it's a stupid question, right?
Let them
And-
feel it once you give them that response.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a stupid questions, and you two are good guys.
Or another very common question they like ask like, all right, you are very short on time and you have like 1 day and you know to releases tomorrow and you know that you won't make it. What would you do?
Yeah.
Right?
That one is a good question.
Yeah, I had a question about
It's a stupid question.
Evgeny.
The other one is stupid because it's like, how long
It's-
would it
it's
take
very-
you
no,
these
it's
are
very
to go
similar.
from here to Chicago?
It's,
Like,
no, it's very similar. It's very similar.
No, it's not similar at all. The
How
first
long it
one was
takes?
very stupid. This one is actually a good question.
It's also stupid.
I feel like either way, it's subjective.
Yeah.
It's subjective either way. All right, just to interject real quick. Listen, I said that we have a guest speaker, and we have him allocated for 11:15. So let's just go ahead and take a 10-minute break, restroom, stretch your legs, get water, whatever, and let's resume this at 11:20.
Thank you for answers.
Yeah, and we're gonna keep doing this. Whatever other questions you got, just set them aside, and we'll get to them.
Pause.
Pause. All right, everybody, we are getting back to this. Let's see, 1 second. Evgeny, did you have something you want to add or before we start this now? Okay. All right, guys. So I'm going to introduce you to George. George will be presenting for the next hour or so, and he's going to go ahead and share some knowledge with us all regarding just, the whole interview process, tips and tricks, and before we get started with that, George, would you like to just introduce yourself to the class and tell them a little about yourself?
Yeah, sure. Can everyone hear and see me okay, first of all?
Yeah, we hear you, see you good.
Okay. All right. Thumbs up. First of all, thank you very much for allowing me to hijack part of your time and talk to you today. I'm really excited because this is something that I'm really passionate about. I love working with others. I love helping people, teaching, and the quality space is something that I've been in for several years, and I'm just very passionate about quality and advocating for customers. So really happy to be here today and excited to chat with you. Actually, I'd like to start with the presentation because I have a short intro about myself, that presentation. So with that, let me start sharing. Okay, can everyone see that okay?
Yeah, that's good.
All right, great. So I wanted to talk about one aspect of the testing interview today, and that's the testing part, the actual testing questions that you're going to expect. There's a little bit of an overview, but it covers one main section in depth, and maybe at another time we can cover other sections, but really as a hiring manager, I wanted to give you the perspective of what, if I was hiring for this position, what I'd be looking for. So yeah, first an introduction, who am I and why should you even listen to me? So here's a little bit about myself. I'm currently a senior manager of quality engineering. I've been in the testing discipline for about 19 years now. It's been a while. But again, it's something that I'm just passionate about. I've always enjoyed, and it's something that I really love doing. And then when it comes to management and hiring, I've done over 300 interviews at several different companies. And I've worked at a few companies that you might recognize, and along with a few others, but I've been a hiring manager for maybe 8 years now, and just seen a lot of candidates come through, and I've been privy to the kind of the background of hiring decisions, so I can give you some insight into what hiring managers are looking for. So let's start with a few general guidelines to any interview, and I'm sure some of this you might already know, but it's just setting up the context for what we're going to get into. First of all, if you're getting to this stage, congratulations. Your resume caught someone's attention, and they like what they saw. They're bringing you in, and now you are preparing for the actual interview. So you're going to do all the basic things like know the company, what the company is doing, the product that they're working on, the people that you're interviewing with. You're going to dress appropriately, one level above the job you're interviewing for. You know what questions to expect, and you've had a solid fundamental understanding of test methodologies and practices, kind of like attending a boot camp course. And you also have questions that you're prepared to ask. So there's two types of questions that you are going to be asked in an interview. There are the testing and more technical questions that cover, test this thing, test planning, how would you write a test case, how would you write a good bug. If you're applying for an SDET position, there's going to be a coding portion. And then there's another category of interview questions that are not so technical, but also really important. things, situational or behavioral type questions. For example, tell me about a time when you disagreed with a decision about a bug. What did you do? What was the situation? What was the outcome? Maybe some problem-solving tests. Some companies still maybe will ask like a riddle type question. Really, it's just to see how you approach problem-solving in general. There's the typical questions that you should be ready for. Things like, why do you want to work here? Why do you want to leave your current job? And then you're going to have time to ask questions. So I'm going to assume that you've prepared for all of this. And then what I really want to focus on today is the testing part, because this is really the make it or break it part. If you're applying for a QA position and you don't really nail this part of the interview, it's not likely that you will pass on to the next stage, even if you do well in the others, because this is the core skill that you need for this job. So what are hiring managers looking for? I tried to put them in broad categories, but this is what I would be looking for. Number one is testing knowledge. Again, to be successful in your job in this position, you have to have that core fundamental understanding. Next is, I want to see some creativity when you're coming up with test cases. You want to break whatever it is that you've got your hands on. And with that, you also have a passion for quality, right? You care about what you're doing. You want to see a product go to customers that is high quality, that is free of defects, and just has a pleasant experience. And speaking of the customer, you want to advocate for the customer too, right? Because you want to put yourself in the shoes of the customer, understand how they're going to use it, and really kind of fight for a great experience for that customer. And finally, you need to be able to demonstrate that you can solve problems, any sort of problem, in a methodical, organized way, right? So you break a problem down, and you can get to a solution in an organized fashion. So again, this is what we're going to focus on today, is the testing knowledge and being able to generate creative test cases. And please, if anyone has any questions, feel free to interrupt throughout the way. I know there's, I'm focusing on a small part, but there's a lot of material here. So if you have questions, please feel free to raise your hand, virtually and or interrupt me and let me know. So a general approach to solving any question, and this can apply to any question you have. I broke it down into 4 parts here. One is understand a little bit more. Usually when you're asked a question, in some cases, it's intentionally vague, right? And that's because the interviewer wants to see what you're going to do when you're given some ambiguity. Do you make a lot of assumptions and just start working on a solution, or do you take some time to really understand what the problem is, get some more insight, and be able to come up with a better plan of how you're going to solve it first before just diving in? Next is, once you've understood what the problem space is, especially if it's a big area or there's still some ambiguity, you break it down into smaller sections. And again, this can apply to any type of question. For example, if you're asked a behavioral type question, you can use the STAR method. You say the situation or task, the action that you did, and what the result was. If it's a testing question, you break down whatever it is that you're going to test, and you also have different types of tests that you apply, and you methodically go through all of this. And same thing for a coding question is, after you've understood what it is that you're trying to solve and the boundaries, then you can start creating some of the methods that you're going to use in the outline, and then you can go into it. And so then step 3 is solve it, complete the answer. Once you have that information, then demonstrate that you can actually get to a solution. Some questions might not have a final solution, so to speak. It could be open-ended, but you're going to show that, yes, I can get to a reasonable answer in the time that I'm given with the information that I have. And most people stop here, but I added a 4th step, which is optimize. And I think this is critical. And I think back to a lot of times when I was being interviewed, and if there was something I didn't know, or I wasn't sure of my answer, I still had some doubt. Oftentimes I would end with saying, you know, just thinking out loud about what I could do to make my answer better. So if let's say I didn't get to a solution, or let's say I got to a solution, but I have some doubt if it's the best one. I start thinking and saying, well, you know, how can I improve this? Are there bugs here? Is there something I didn't ask? How do I make my answer more complete, more robust? And I start going through the problem again and thinking, and a lot of times I feel like that is what kind of pushed me, you know, to a yes answer. Just demonstrating that I'm not always just content and confident in that I have just the right solution, but I'm always looking to grow and to, you know, continuously improve. So I think that's a critical fourth step. So let's talk about the testing question. Yep. The question there?
No, I think you're good.
Thought I heard some. So without a doubt, in a testing interview, you will be asked to test. So you will be given something to test, and it could be anything. I have a few of my own favorite questions. A common one that I like to ask is test a calculator app, test a web-based calculator app, or sometimes I look for something in the room and I give it to the candidate and I say, how would you test this? Anything random. And to that question as well, there's a methodical way of going through it. And here really are the steps. The number one step, and I cannot emphasize this enough, is know thy customer. Know who is going to be using the product, how they're going to be using it, what is it's intended to, and this applies to anything. Even when I'm asked coding questions, write a method that does, you know, validates if a string is a palindrome, or, you know, anything at all. I first ask, who is the customer? Yeah, even if it's a coding question, is this going to be in a library that's going to be used by other developers? Is this going to be a standalone method that is an API that's going to get called? Is this going to run on the web or on a client? So know exactly who the customer is, how it's going to be used, so you can better answer the question. And, you know, even if it seems obvious, just asking the question shows that you care about who the customer is and you want to know. So I'm always impressed by any candidate who starts by asking, who's the customer? Next, kind of an obvious one, but really understand the product and what it is you're trying to build, what it is you're trying to test, and the requirements. Again, a lot of times I see candidates jumping right into the solution, and sometimes they do well, but if they don't take a minute to ask some questions and really think about what the product is and consider all the boundaries and the requirements, they're not really going to have a great handle on the scope of the test and what needs to be done. And again, even if it seems simple, ask some questions, get some clarification, but also kind of, you don't want to overdo this step, because you want to sense out feel out the interviewer. If they say, you know, no, it's pretty simple, this is it, then say, okay, great, but at least you've asked the question. And another thing is you want to understand the different components of the system. So this is going to help you when you start breaking it down into different chunks and then being able to test it. Next is generate tests for each of the components of the system, and then each type of test. And I have a list here. This is not an exhaustive list, but for every test interview that I have, and even when I'm interviewing someone, I write down a list of the different types of tests that I could do. I've literally walked in with a paper that has these written on before, 2 interviews. One time I forgot this paper when I was being interviewed, and I asked the interviewer if I can use the whiteboard, and I wrote these down first so I wouldn't forget them, and then I went through them. And actually the person said, hey, I'm really impressed. I've never seen anyone list out these different types of verifications. And I thought it was a no-brainer, but apparently this wasn't something very common. But take a list with you because you want to go through each and every single one of these. And there's more. Come up with more. This is not the exhaustive list, but it's just something to get you started. And then, definitely be creative. Try to break whatever it is that you are testing. As a tester, you want to find those nasty bugs before customers do. And anyone can press a few buttons, but it really takes kind of a unique, twisted mind to really look at something and think of really nasty ways to break it. Because you know what? Customers end up doing that. And especially if you're working on a product that is going to be mass marketed, that it's going to go out at a scale. If it's something that's going to be used by millions of customers or maybe millions of times, be sure that something weird will happen. Someone will try something weird. And so you better try it first before customers do to know what happens. And then do not give up. I've tried to put the most important things on here. This really also is one of them. I could tell you personally that I have said no to candidates who give up too easily on generating test cases. They will start, they will say a few tests, and then they'll say, okay, I'm done. And then I'll ask, anything else? Is there anything else you would test? And they'll say, no, I think that's it. And that's an automatic no for me. If you think that in 2 minutes you can generate some tests and you can say a product is ready to ship, I don't want you on my team. I want someone who's never satisfied, never gives up, even if you are stuck, and we'll go through demonstration, never give up. And yeah, even if you get to a point where you really can't think of anything else, start talking out loud and say what you're thinking. That's all the tests I can come up with right now, but I wonder if there's more. I wonder if there's something weird that customers will do. And just start thinking out loud and wait for them to stop you. I can also tell you on the flip side of someone who stops too early, there are candidates who I take a lot of notes when I'm interviewing, and my fingers start to hurt because I'm typing so fast of all the tests they're generating, and I actually have to, and we're running out of time, and I have to tell them, okay, thank you, that's enough, that's good. And in most cases, that is a yes for me, that someone can creatively come up with a lot of test cases, and I have to stop them. And then finally, optimize. Go back, look at your tests, think through some other other tests, or maybe you've listed off a lot of tests. You start thinking about how you can cover the same surface area with fewer number of tests and just be better. Again, even if you can't do this, start thinking about it. Start talking out loud. Start wondering. Just asking the question out loud sometimes helps you. And even if it doesn't, it shows that you are thinking of how to improve, how to get better at your testing. All right. So let's take an example. Let's go through this process. And I intentionally chose a non-software object, a product to test, because I want to demonstrate that you can come up with creative test cases for just about anything. So for this example, the question is, how would you test a pencil? Come up with as many test cases to verify that a pencil is ready to ship. And that's it. That's the question. And now the tables turn to you, and it's your turn. So what I've done here is I've taken down these steps and I've answered them myself. I took about 1 hour to do this. I tried to actually limit my time so that, similar to an interview time, and I wrote these down, but I just want to show you, I just want to show you a way to approach this problem, how to think about it, and some possible answers that you can have. This is just scratching the surface. So as you go through this, think about why some of these answers are here, but also think about what you would ask, what other things you would test. And please, I think I have a few slides to cover this. If you have questions at the end of each slide, please let me know if you have questions and we can go. So
be sure to speak up, guys. If you got anything, chime in.
All right, let's start going through this. So first thing, if you remember, the first commandment is know thy customer. So I'm going to start asking some questions to better understand who the customer is and the product. So my first question is, who's the customer? And I'm actually going to start saying who possible customers are, right? Because sometimes maybe the interviewer never even considered it. He just wants you, he wants you to just test the pencil. But you are going to show that you care about the customer. You're going to consider how it's going to be used. So here's a few examples. First one I thought of was, is it going to be used in a school? Maybe it's going to go to art students, or maybe it's an elementary school, or and why am I asking that? Well, because I want to know how dark the pencil needs to write, how thick it needs to write. If it's used for art, maybe there's some requirements there. What about the age of the students? That's going to affect how big their fingers and hand size is. Are they right-handed, left-handed? How much pressure? Maybe this is going to go to small children, and they need to be able to write dark with applying not too much pressure. So I'm going to start thinking about these considerations. Another interesting customer here is maybe it's going to go to prisons. Maybe it's for like a prison education program, and we don't want the lead to be too sharp and too hard, right? For obvious reasons, we don't want to weaponize our product. So it's just thinking of different customers and trying to be creative. You might get a laugh out of this, which is great. If you can get your interviewer to laugh, you're 50% there. Not with, don't be a comedian, but you know what I mean. And then international. I think a lot of companies make the mistake of being very centric to their actual location. Every company is guilty of this. We tend to put blinders on and think of our immediate surroundings. But what about international? Is this going to ship to different countries? Is it going to ship in different languages? Again, even if the interviewer says, no, just US, you've at least limited it, right? At least and now you can start generating tests based on this information. Next, I want to know more about the product itself. So does this pencil have an eraser? So maybe the interviewer handed you an actual pencil. Great. If you see an eraser on it, great. It's still good if you just ask the question and say, okay, I see an eraser on here. Are they all going to have erasers, right? Again, you want to know the product very well. How long is the pencil? Is it going to ship sharpened or unsharpened? What's the length going to be when it first ships? What's the color of the pencil? What is it supposed to be? Not just of the lead itself, but the outside of the pencil. What color is the eraser? And then requirements. How long should it write for before it needs sharpening? Is there a way to measure that? With a certain amount of pressure, how long do I have to write before it gets to the wood starts scratching, and I need to sharpen it again? Is there a requirement for that? Again, I want to know because I want to create a test that verifies this, and I want to know when that test should pass or when it should fail. And then so you know the customer, you understand the product, and you understand the different components of the product. And what you now have is the requirements that you need to create your test cases. You've broken down the product into several different components. You know how they interact together. And now it's time for the creative juices to really flow. And so I present to you our system under test, the pencil. It's, yep, just like you thought. It's a basic pencil. It's got a lead tip. It's got an eraser. These are the main components. Ignore the little metal thing for now, to keep it simple, to keep it really simple. And let's start testing this. So this is the main part now, where you're going to go through each of the different types of tests and come up with as many as you can. And you want to show, again, I have that list written down because when I'm trying to be very creative, sometimes I jump around a lot, but I try to go through this list one by one. And then, within an area I can jump around a little, but I want to go through each one of these sections and make sure I cover it and come up with as many tests as I can. So, so I'm taking that list that I had previously, and for each one of these, I have some, tests to consider. So first is the very basic functional test. Can it write on a standard white lined paper? Can it erase what I just wrote, right? This is your basic functional test. If this test fails, throw the product away, go back to the drawing board. Nothing else matters at this point. But cover the first basic functional test. Does it work as intended? Next, let's start getting into some more interesting tests here. What about error conditions? And some of these I might not know the answer, but I'm gonna try it, right? So I'm thinking, can this write on skin? Is it supposed to? What about underwater? Is it supposed to or not? Can this be, I don't have this written down, but can this be taken into outer space? Can you write with a pencil in outer space or not? What about on different materials like metals, on walls? Again, is it supposed to or is it not? I have little kids and I would love, I would pay extra to buy writing utensils that say that, easily removable from walls. So understand who the customer is, you can start generating test cases and think of these different conditions. Next, I'm going to think about boundary conditions. So even, I wrote that functional test, but I want to test, the boundaries of what it is that I have. So usually your boundaries are, negative, positive, 0, and maybe sometimes at the end limits too, the upper limit, lower limit. So my tests here are, I'm going to write after I first sharpen the pencil to see how it writes. I'm going to write when it's at the shortest length that it could possibly write. I want to see, what the lead is like at different levels. And I'm going to do the same thing with the eraser. The first time I erase with the eraser, and then when the eraser gets really short, I want to see if it's still erasing the same. I might not know what the outcome is, but I'm going to test these and see. And then performance. Performance is, there's a few here that are really important: performance, security, accessibility, localization. These, if a candidate doesn't mention some of these, for me, I ding them. And then I ask them about it. I say, well, how would you test performance? So for a pencil, you might wonder, well, performance for a pencil, but here's some example of performance tests for a pencil. Is how long can I write before it needs to be sharpened again? That could be a performance test, right? What about under different temperatures? What happens to the lead at extreme low temperatures, extreme high temperatures? And maybe we know exactly what countries it ships to, and we know what the temperature range is, but what about other conditions? What about if this is being used in a factory somewhere where it's really cold or really hot? I want to test. I want to make sure that it's still going to perform the same under those conditions. What about, you know, how much I can bend it before it breaks? And some of these could also be security issues, and I'll go into that next, but you can kind of see what types of performance tests I could do. The tip pressure breakpoint. So, you know, I mentioned it could ship to adults, it could ship to children, but you know, I want to know what the average human pressure is when they are writing, because I don't want my pencil tip to break right away every, you know, time it's used. I want it to be robust enough so even someone who uses, you know, a lot of pressure is not going to break it right away. And then same thing with the eraser. How much can I erase before it's really worn down? What's my limit? How do I know it's performing well? And then what about erasing 1 month after I wrote something down? I don't know about lead, but you know, I'm going to ask questions. I wonder if lead changes somehow or binds to certain types of paper differently over time. You know, so you know, if I know my requirements, if I know how it's going to be used, I can create a performance test that tests the requirements, but also goes beyond that too. So maybe erasing 1 month might not seem, or 1 month after writing might not seem like a common case, but I want to know what happens. Maybe, or maybe not even erasing, maybe the lead just comes off the paper after a month. You know, that would be horrible. You take notes down and then you go back to look at it and nothing's there. So just think of ways to test for performance. Next is security. This is another one of areas that some people kind of scratch their head and say, well, you know, there's no security test here, but think about it. So for a pencil, is lead toxic? What if, you know, someone eats the lead of the pencil? What if I get it on my skin? What happens? You know, I don't know. I really don't know what, you know, I hear, oh, lead poisoning, and but I really don't know what materials in the pencil. I want to know, I want to learn, understand, and I want to create a security test. I want to make sure that my product is not going to harm customers, right? You know, I don't want my company to go down over, you know, lead poisoning. So I'm going to test for this. Also, you know, like I mentioned, this performance test where you have a breakpoint. What happens when the pencil breaks? You know, does it splinter into a million pieces and causes splinters? You know, I want to make sure my product really is going to be secure in every sense of the word, right? So, and this is another area where I always ask candidates, if they have not brought up security, I ask them, oh, do you think there are any security tests that you can run here? Is there anything for security? And sometimes they'll say no security. And then I'll ask them again. I'll say, well, I wonder, you know, is lead toxic? Yeah. Is there anything you can do to make sure it's going to be safe to use? And if they still say no, I'm pretty sure that I'm going to reject this candidate. Because even if they don't come up with actual security tests, I want to know that they're thinking about this. So security should be on everyone's mind. Next on the list, accessibility. So again, in the case of a pencil, can this be used by, you know, everyone? What different hands and finger sizes? What about someone who doesn't have all their fingers? You know, I wonder how different people write. You know, how do different people hold pencils? I don't want to think that I'm, you know, the only customer, and so I want to think through these considerations. And then I really struggled to find a typical accessibility test here. The only one I could think of was for someone who is visually impaired. You know, does my pencil feel the same as other writing utensils, or is it unique? Because if I can't see and I have a box of pencils or writing utensils, I want to be able to identify the pencil just by feeling it out. So again, I'm just curious. I wonder, and this could also be a localization issue. You know, I wonder in other countries or for art students, right? what are the other type of writing utensils? How is this going to be used next to them? And then I can come up with accessibility tests that says, hey, here are our competitors in the market, or here's what our customers are going to be using, and ours doesn't stand out. It feels just like all these other ones. And so for someone who's visually impaired, maybe, you know, again, this might be an extreme case, but someone who's visually impaired but is working on an art piece, right? They want to generate something beautiful even though they can't really see it. I want to be able to have that customer identify my product and use it, not confuse it with something else. Internationalization. This is always an interesting one, and I like to see how people think here. But think of your product going out to different countries, and you might not know about other cultures. You might not be aware of, you know, what customers in other locations are doing or care about, but at least ask the question. So remember, we asked kind of what color the pencil, the writing is going to be, and what color is the actual pencil. So think about this, and then, you know, different countries, different cultures have different meanings for different colors. So is this color going to be offensive to a certain country? Is it the standard? Is there a standard? And then what about shipping it to other customers? Is it going to go straight from the factory to international locations? Is there going to be a stop on the way? What about the packaging? You know, what's the writing? Does it need to be in different languages, or maybe we shouldn't use a lot of words if there's some instructions? Maybe we should use pictures if it's going to ship to a lot of international customers and I don't have a lot of surface space to write. So how am I going to communicate important information about my product? And do all customers know how to use these type of pencils? What about sharpening them? Do they ship sharpened or not sharpened? You know, do I need to put something on there of how to sharpen it or how not to sharpen it, or a warning? So these are just, you know, again, considerations of going to other countries and internationalization. Localization, so this is slightly different than internationalization. There might be some overlap, but localization is about the actual language that's being used. So this is me wondering out loud of, you know, is there a universally accepted standard for pencils? Is there a symbol that says this is this type of pencil that I need to put on the pencil, or the labeling, the packaging? Again, I might not know, but I'm going to ask, I'm going to find out, I'm going to create tests for this type of area. Any questions so far here?
Nope. That's good here. All clear. Yeah, all clear.
I know I'm talking a lot, and that's never a good sign. So, and then next, so you've gone through this list of all the possible tests that you could think of, and you've done better than me. This is just the starting point. Next, what do you do? So if you are stuck, or even if the person is, if the interviewer is silent, which, you know, basically says that they're waiting for something else, start thinking out loud. Don't stop there. And I kind of giving you a few examples of how I think out loud, but for example, if you can't think of, a security test, you know, just start saying, well, oh, gee, I can't think of a way to test security, but there probably is. You know, I'm wondering, what about, how can it affect, you know, writing on skin? What about different skin tones? You know, I don't know. I mean, I could test on my own skin, but, you know, I wonder with people with different pigment levels, how's it going to affect them? Is that a security issue? Is that maybe an internationalization issue? You know, I don't know, but I'll try to find out. Yeah, again, just show that you can think of security. And if you can't think of security tests for this product, think of security tests for other products and say, you know, I've learned about cross-site scripting, buffer overflow, you know, denial of service attacks, but I don't know how these would apply to this product. Let me think about this. What you've just demonstrated is, you know, typical security attacks. how to test for them, and that you're going to consider these when you're testing a product. Even if you have not generated a single security test for the product you've been given, you've demonstrated that you are able to come up with security tests, and that goes a long way. It shows a lot of creativity on your part. Finally, optimize. So let's say you've gone through this list and think you're done. Don't stop there. Go back, think through it again, and think of ways to optimize the answer that you just gave. And there probably is a way to make it better and more efficient solution. So here are some ways to optimize this. Again, you can just start thinking out loud. So for the pencil, I wonder how many times do I need to test the writing before I'm confident that it's going to write well, and it's going to write well every time at different thickness levels. Yeah, I wonder how many times I really have to do this. So I'm going to test after I first sharpen, and I'm going to test at the shortest length. I'm going to test in the middle. But then what? Do I need more or do I need less? Can I be guaranteed that the lead itself is going to be the same consistency throughout the entire length of the pencil? Is there a way to know that? What about, if we're going to ship millions of pencils, do I have to run these 3 tests on well, I can't run them on every single pencil before they ship, but how many pencils do I have to test before I've reached a statistically significant sample set, right? And for that, throughout the manufacturing process, how many times do I have to test this? Maybe when every shift, how often do workers change shift? Maybe the workers in the factory, maybe they have different skill levels. So I want to test and make sure that our pencil is going to hold up no matter who is making it in the factory. So again, I haven't set a single number yet. I haven't thrown out any specific tests or conditions, but I'm thinking through all these, and just that goes a really long way. So you've now, let's see back here. So you've now gone through all your tests. Even if you're stuck, you've thought out loud, you've optimized, and your interviewer is super impressed. They cut you off. They tell you, okay, stop. Like, I give up. We're running out of time. Which is always a good sign. And you've done all this, and you have a smile on your face. Your interviewer's hands are, hurting because they've taken so many notes. And they're kind of looking at you in shock of how awesome you are as a tester. You kind of nailed this part. So how do you do this? How do you practice this? And really, there's no better way than to just do it. Pretend that you're being interviewed.
A little noise over here.
Pretend that you're being interviewed, or do a random search on Google or something. Pick a random object. Pick a random app. Pick a random functionality within an app. Take your favorite app. Maybe start with something and take functionality within it, like maybe Google Maps or Apple Maps, and just test searching, just the search functionality. Come up with as many test cases as you can. Write them down. Use that list of different test types. Come up, first with questions of who the customer is. Try to think of different customers. Know the product. Make some guesses. Make some assumptions. That's fine. Do this with a friend. So have someone challenge you, right? Someone who's a good tester, maybe even a better tester than you, and go through this and tell them, okay, you're the interviewer. I'm going to come up with as many tests as I can, and I want you to challenge me. Come up with better tests than I do, or ask me questions that would help me come up with better test cases. And actually go through this process. Record yourself answering questions so you see, what you look like when you're thinking, what you look like when you're stuck. These could be kind of important because like when you are stuck, you still want to think out loud. You don't want to be quiet for too long, things like that. And also time yourself so you know how long you're taking. If you know your interview is going to be in, let's say, 45-minute increments, then you can assume that you're going to have one about testing, and the testing portion will be, at least 30 minutes if that's the main part of it. How long can you talk about test cases and the whole process of knowing the customer, product, generating tests, and optimizing? If you can't do this for 10 minutes, do it. Keep trying. I would say that's the minimum. So again, if I'm doing this, if I'm hiring someone, I want to not talk for at least 10 minutes and have that person not stop talking for 10 minutes of just coming up with test cases. And finally, this might sound simple, but don't forget to smile and have fun. Someone gave me a tip years ago and said, before you walk into an interview or before you even get on a call with a recruiter or manager or anyone for a screen, smile. And it makes a difference. And it does, it sounds cheesy, but before I pick up the phone, I'll smile and then pick up the phone, and I kind of start with that positive energy. And that also goes a long way. If you can get your interviewer to smile or see that you have a positive attitude, they're actually more willing to help you or give you the benefit of the doubt, and have fun, right? At the end of the day, whether or not you get this particular position that you're interviewing for, you are eventually going to get something great. So don't forget to smile and have fun along the way.
Thank you.
So that's it. I've talked for way too long, again, which is never a good sign. So any questions at all? I know I've attacked just one part. It's a critical part, but one part of the interview process. I hope I've given you insight into what hiring managers are looking for and what a great answer is like. But I really want to know if anyone has any questions or just any sort of feedback at all. I'd love to hear from anyone.
I mean, about this, everything clear and was really interesting. Like really helpful. Tips really important. Yeah. So we're glad we have this session with you. And about questions, I don't know. Maybe what about the answers which we can give to our interviewer that we're not really professional on that, but we would like to not be on their eyes that stupid, and can answer at least something. So how we can go with that? From which point we can start? I mean, which words to use, something. Any tips?
You mean, I want to make sure I understand your question here. So you're wondering if you're stuck or if you don't know where to start, how do you start?
Yes, I mean any keywords maybe to not being in their eyes, to being that dumb,
So we're talking about a scenario that they ask you a question and don't know the response exactly.
Yes, exact response. Yeah, and you maybe can rephrase your answer and make it more smoothly, I would say.
Yeah. So it's totally okay to not understand, the question or, not know where to start. That's okay. That happens to me too. What's not okay is to give up. So you have to show that, because you're going to get these situations in your job, right? You're going to be given a task maybe that you don't fully understand, or maybe you think you understand, but you really don't. And I want to see how you handle that situation. So if you are stuck in that case, start by understanding more, asking questions. As being interviewed myself, I've done this often where, you know, I'll think about a question and it doesn't make sense at all, or maybe they ask me about something I have no idea about. And so I'll say, well, you know, can you give me some more information? Or what do you mean by this? You know, just start getting the person to talk a little bit more. Maybe they did it on purpose. You know, some interviewers are kind of, you know, cruel and nasty like that. Well, they'll ask you a question that almost doesn't make sense. They just want to see how you're going to react, right? So if you start sweating and clamming up and saying and walking out the door, no, there's their answer, right? So it's totally fine, but you know, have that spirit of, even if I don't know something, I'm gonna find out. Ask questions. You know, even you know, as a senior manager in interviews, I've asked, if I don't know the meaning of a word, I'll say, you know, what does blank mean? You know, and they'll explain it, and I'll say, oh, okay, and they'll ask some more questions, then I'll answer. To me, that shows that someone who doesn't know has the ability to know. And I think that's, you know, my dad's an electrical engineer. He worked at Boeing for several years before he retired. And he always says, engineers might not know, but they know how to learn.
Well defined, yeah.
And that's really the critical part as a quality engineer. That it's like a skill. It's hard to learn that, but if you know how to learn, you're going to be successful, you know, whatever you do. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah. So yeah, it was like first question, like, can you want to answer with words, I don't know, or what do you have to find instead of that?
Well, yeah, don't start with I don't know. You know, but ask questions. You know, think that in your head.
I see.
You know, say like, you know, I don't know, but tell me more about this. You know, can you expand the question a little bit? You know, and by the way, all you guys here, you're doing the right first step, right? Like you asked me about what keywords to say and how to look intelligent. You are going to, because you're taking this course, you're learning about the fundamentals of testing. You're learning about the industry, so you already know a lot of this information, and you are going to use this when you do interview, and you know, hopefully when you do get the job, you're going to use all this knowledge that you have. So I think you already have it inside you, and that's why I tried to stress the parts that that you maybe wouldn't pick up in a course or just online, but things that a method of answering that would help you through the interview process this way. So I wouldn't worry about, you know, looking dumb. I don't think I'm a great speaker myself. I say a lot. You know, I English is not my first language. I stutter a lot. I used to stutter even more. So, but you know, sure, I'm working on these things, but I try to have a really positive attitude and never give up. Learn, understand, and then do my best. And you know, if the person across the table doesn't like that, you know, I might not want to work for you. If you don't want, you know, my ability to learn, you know, my never give upness, and the knowledge I have and the abilities I have, if you don't want that, then I don't know if I even want to work for you. So I think you guys are going to do great.
It's really important, yeah. Thanks.
I have one question. It's not necessary about the test part. It was really clear. Thank you for that. But the question that I found really hard to answer when you're taking an interview is, what would you do if a software developer or the business analyst disagrees with you on a certain issue? How would you, you know, what would you do in this case? And if you can clarify on that, I would really appreciate that.
Yeah, great question. Vlad, is it? Yeah, great question. That is a question I ask myself. I would expect to be asked. And, you know, I can include it maybe in this course for, you know, this presentation for next time, but I wanted to focus on the testing part. But yeah, let's answer this. So the question is, how would you respond to the question of, let's say you disagree with a decision about a bug? Is that right?
Yes, yes. So it's like you found a bug and you address it, but people disagree with you that it's a bug. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll tell you how I would answer this question and what I would look for someone to answer this question. And I'm going to use some of that same methodology to answer this question as well. Always, number one is first learn and understand. So I want to learn and understand more about the decision. I want to know who that person is. So maybe this developer or PM or dev manager, maybe they say no to all bugs, right? Maybe they're really stressed. Maybe they're very emotional, right? So I want to know a little bit about them and the way they made that decision. I want to know more about this particular bug, but also other bugs. Maybe I think this is a big issue, but when I look at all the other open bugs out there, maybe this really isn't the top priority, and I start agreeing with that decision. And then I want to look at the actual bug itself. Did I write it clearly? Do I have all the information in there to present a good argument? Maybe I don't. Maybe I need to include more of the customer impact. So if I can get data, can I get data? So the first part is really understand at the big picture, understand the person, product, the customer, the issue. And then I would start diving a little bit deeper and gathering some more information, not just to understand, but to see if I can get some more data to sway the answer, or maybe convince myself that, yeah, I agree with this decision. So data is always good to provide, but what kind of data? So customer impact is great data. So if you can point out how this bug is going to affect customers, if you can get number or percentage of customers, what the impact is specifically, what they call it the user bad, to use a Microsoft term. Is this a little error? Is it recoverable? Is there going to be data loss? Is it a crash? Maybe it looks bad, but very few customers will hit it. Maybe it's a bad bug, but 0.01% of customers will encounter this issue. And even though we may want to fix it later, we have other higher priority issues to fix, right? So gather as much data as you can, put the information in the bug. And in my work myself, even as a senior test manager, sometimes I've taken, an hour to go through customer feedback, and I'll copy and paste customer feedback about this issue. One time I copied and pasted maybe about 20 different customer feedback. It was a minor issue. And I was able to convince the PM on another team to actually fix this bug because 20 customers complained about it. So gather some more information, put together an argument, and then go back, try to present your argument again, keep a positive attitude, assume a positive intent. People who know me know that I say this a lot. So when you're talking to someone else, go smile, go with a positive attitude, assume that they care about the customer and the product and that they know what they're doing and they're smart and intelligent and passionate, and go with that attitude and say, hi, I wanted to talk to you about this issue. I looked into this a little bit more and I gathered some more information, and I was wondering if we can take another look through it, right? So don't make this an adversarial thing. Your peers, your coworkers, you guys are friends here. You want to do what's best for the customer, present the data, and then let's make this difficult. Let's say the person says, no, you're stupid, right? Get out of my office. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't give up, right? If you are confident in what you have, don't give up. Look at who else makes a decision. Who else is responsible for triage? One time, one of my peers once at Amazon had this situation, and there was a really nasty bug that the dev manager said, no, we're not going to fix this. And so my peer, he went to the director and he said he wanted to show her something in the product and say, hey, I want to show you something really cool. You know, here's the new feature, and here's how it works. And then, oh, ooh, that's a nasty bug. And then she said, yeah, oh, that's horrible. We should fix this right now. Done. And I don't mean to go above someone's head, right? Because you're going to work with this person. You want to keep that relationship well. But think about creative ways that you can still get a different decision, especially if you're confident that this is the right thing for the customer. And finally, let's say you get shut down at every level. Maybe the answer is, okay, we're not going to fix this right now, but can we commit to fixing this in the next release? You know, and again, try to come up with as many creative ways not to give up. I don't want to hear, if I'm interviewing you and I ask you this question, I don't want to hear you say, yeah, that's it, that's all I'll do, and I'm done, right? Or I'll give up. I don't want to hear that. So think of, you know, maybe you can fix it yourself. Look at the code. You know, can you fix this yourself and send a code review? Yeah, that would be awesome. Get creative. Think of as many ways as you can, and don't give up.
George, let me add here something as well. So when you got such a question like, what would you do if developer does not agree with you about this issue? I totally agree with all what George said. I would just want to add that you have to understand why he is denying that it's not an issue also. Because I got in that situation when both sides were actually right. I got an issue which is, from technical standpoint, from the code perspective, it wasn't an issue at all. Code was written good, but the business logic was wrong. The business logic was wrong. And he said that it's not an issue, but from my standpoint, doesn't make sense. Let me explain real quick, right? I like this example. The issue was that the thumbnail was displaying some certain numbers of let's say of the feature, right? But the correct number, but in the bottom it displayed that, for example, it should be 10 thumbnails, right? But it displayed 8. Where's 2 others? But I know that there should be 10. So from GUI, it's messed up. Something was wrong. And I went to the developers and I said, actually, from the code perspective, it's fine, just because the logic was this way, and it's supposed to show 8 instead of 10. I said, well, I understand that, but from user perspective, it just doesn't make sense. And for me, personally, if I would be user, it's just confusing. That's it, right? Even from the code perspective, it was written okay. So what we did in this case, we just went up all the way to product manager. Then product manager said, well, technically, yeah, we would design another way, so it's supposed to be another bug. But since you brought it up again, let's go and figure out why that happened. Because that thing was living there for forever, right? Nobody brought it up. So it went all the way up to actually higher up managers, and apparently they put it in the queue for fixing it, even if it was actually a bug, right? So I would say always try to understand why the other party also saying it's not a bug, and then you can, as George said, just try to get as much information. And yeah, never say, okay, if it's not the bug, it's not the bug. It's better than answered, right? You have to, well, there was a situation when I wrote a bug and they were asking, actually, it's not a bug. Could you please close the ticket? If you say, okay, I will close the ticket, you're in a bad situation. You should not close the ticket until you're like 100% sure that it's not an issue, or like, that's not your just you are not a decision maker to close this issue if it exists, right? Even somebody is asking you, well, you have to 100% sure before making, because this is your basically responsibility. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, awesome presentation, George. I really
Thank
liked
you.
it.
Well,
Can
thank
I
you.
ask you one more question?
Yeah,
You talked a lot about optimized steps through interview, and can you clarify more about these steps? I mean, if I created a lot of regression test cases, optimized steps means I need to figure out how to improve my all steps.
Yeah, okay, very, very good question. So the point here is, think about in a real life situation, you've generated, let's say, 1,000 test cases, right? And they take 2 days to run, all of them. But you're about to ship the product, and a day before you ship, you fix a bug, right? Oh, we found something, we fixed it, and we don't have time to run all our tests. So you're in the situation of optimizing. You have to prioritize what tests you're going to run. And so you want to take those 1,000 tests that take 2 days, and you want to get it down to 1 day or maybe even less. So the goal here is to think of, and there's different terms for this. You can think of, there's a concept called equivalency classing, which is you can take several tests and say, well, these 3 tests actually, in the software, they go through the same code path. So they're actually equivalent. They're testing the same thing. So I don't need to run all 3. I can run 1, and I would validate the same thing, right? So you can use that method, other methods, but the goal is to think of, how can I be confident in shipping this product with the least number of tests possible? And there's no right answer. This is this is what makes testing hard, is you can never run all your test cases. You will never ship with 0 bugs. There's always going to be issues that you know that you ship with, and issues that you don't know that you ship with. But a great tester, so a good tester comes up with a lot of tests. A great tester knows which tests to run at what time to maximize, to minimize risk before shipping. So this is where this really comes into play. So this part, you go back and you start thinking about ways to optimize. And, even if you haven't written them down, like if you just said them out loud, go back and start thinking of, what are the least number of tests I need to run before I'm confident that maybe just this small little component is ready to ship. So, in the pencil example I talked about, let's take just writing, right? So writing a certain darkness level. Okay, that's it. So how do I know that every pencil is gonna pass the darkness test, let's call it? I should come up with the technical term for this. That is gonna pass the darkness test. Every pencil will, and every pencil will at different lengths of the pencil, right? It is impossible to test every single pencil before it ships, right? Literally, because you have to ship a pencil that's not used, right? So start thinking about how you're going to do that. How do I test this from the factory? How many times do I have to test it? What lengths of the pencil is the lead actually going to be consistent? Can I guarantee this? Maybe I don't even have to test it at all. Maybe the chemical itself of the lead is guaranteed. Maybe a property of lead itself is that the chemical formula is actually the same throughout the entire pencil, right? So maybe I just have to test it once, make sure like, yeah, that really is the case, and I'm good. So this is what I'm talking about optimizing. And you can apply this to software. You can, there's, like I mentioned, equivalency classing. You can look at code paths of what is executed. You can look at inputs and outputs. you can take, you can do combinatorial matrix, right? There's tools out there that would let you look at all the different configurations, right? All the different combinations, and take something like, I did this at Amazon once, where we had, I think, 180,000 possible combinations. We eliminated them down to 10. And we were, I think, like 80% confident that we would cover 80% of the use cases with those 10 versus 180,000. So there's ways to do this, but it's real life, it's practical. And this is like what makes a good tester a great tester, is being able to think like this.
Thank you, George, for great tips.
You're welcome. Hope that helps.
I have one more question. Again, it's not regarding the actual test part of the interview, but another question that I have difficulty with is what are your biggest weaknesses? What is, like, because I know there are several camps of thought on that, how to answer, but yeah, if you can clarify on that, I would really appreciate it.
You know, I don't ask this question in interviews. You know, I don't have a great answer myself. I'm sorry. I don't want to just, you know, give you something that's not helpful. So I'm gonna have to look that up and see. That's because I get that. I asked that, and I should probably know this myself, but I don't. Sorry.
I think it's like old style and old style of asking this question, like, what's your weakness and what's your strength, right? I mean, it's one of those. I don't like those questions either, but I've been asked a couple times when I did that, and you know, in all ways, like 5 years ago, the answer would be like, oh, my weakness is I work too much, you know, this bullshit stuff. And nowadays, what I saw, and the better answer would be your honest answer, but not that honest. It's like you can say that, well, I can be distracted very easily, but you don't want you want to tell them how do you overcome your weaknesses, right? You can say like, okay, I can be distracted. That's why I'm setting my, like, I turn off all my notification, for example, or I just set this some certain limited time for doing like bug hunting session and nothing else, and kind of those things. But again,
an answer that I always give for this question would be I can, what is it? I just had my answer too. I just lost it. My train of thought go. Something along the lines of I can just become too like too detail oriented or too consumed with a specific task, or I'll start focusing too much on like efficiencies of, oh no, now I remember my answer. It was going to be that I get bored if I'm not regularly challenged. That's my greatest weakness. If I'm not constantly challenged, if I'm not tackling new problems, I will get bored and lose interest. But then that also helps me pivot into my greatest strength, is that I am always seeking new challenges. I'm always seeking new knowledge. I'm always trying to learn new tools and see how I can apply it, right? So in my case, I had it set up for the weakness to pivot into my greatest strength as well. Now, I'm not saying say what I say, be honest and find something that applies to you. But if you can have something that, like, you know, complements each other and a way to overcome that issue, you're setting yourself up for a good response.
yeah, it's like balancing to be very honest with balancing not to be like bullshitting.
Yeah, because it's true. If I get bored, man, I'm gonna leave. So keep me challenged, keep me engaged.
Yeah. And you know, it's a good question to be prepared for. You should be prepared for it. It gets asked. I don't like the question because it's easy to fake the answer, right? I don't know if the person's, I work too hard or something. So I usually ask a different question. I say, tell me something that consistently has shown up in your performance reviews in the past that's an area for improvement. Because I actually want to know what this person's managers have identified as a weakness consistently. Because most likely, people, it's very hard to change. So I want to know what I'm getting, and I want that person to be as honest as possible. So if they can identify that, they can tell me that's most likely what I'm going to get.
All right, George. Thank you for your presentation. We are running out of the time, so thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you. That was awesome.
Yeah, much appreciated, George.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thanks for your questions. And yeah, I really appreciate you guys giving me the time to chat. Thank you.
Thank you again.
All right, guys.
Bye. Have a good weekend.
You too.
All right, guys. That's pretty much it. So see you all on Monday. Yeah.
So-
Prepare your questions for us as well,
Yes.
and we'll go from there. Right. This is the last call. If you feel that you are very behind, that's the last call to ask and bring up these questions. Even if you are way off, don't waste your time. Ask questions, all right? Because then you will go to the market, and that's pretty much it. You're gonna be your final exam. So do it, all right? Bring your questions.
Yep.
All right, guys. Thank you very much. See you all on Monday.
Take it easy, guys.
Thank you.
Такого придумать.